Well,
Good
good
evening.
evening, everyone. Those who are on the eastern side of the world, in the Philippines, Cambodia, China, Thailand, what other India? I know we had so many people from that side. And good afternoon to those who are joining from Europe and Africa. I saw some joining from Nigeria, from the UK, from Romania, from I think Kazakhstan. And good morning to those who are in the US and
Already.
Latin America. It is wonderful to have you here today because we have come to learn about something that is very current right now. We are delighted that you have decided to join us. It is really good to see you. And Dr. Maria Lemon, it's good to see you there from Colorado. She is one of our members here, or regular members. It is wonderful to have each and every one of you. If you don't mind, please post in the chat area where you're joining us from, university and your country. If you're not affiliated with the university or an institution, just write the country where you're joining us from. So whenever we have a minute, we can just look at that to see the diversity that we have here. We had about 1,550 people who registered for this webinar. But of course, we know from the culture of webinars, not everybody's going to be here. Last time we had a space for 300 seats. Today we have seats for 1,000. So hopefully everybody will be able to have a seat because we don't want anybody missing out on this very important session webinar by a seasoned qualitative research scholar, very well known in the field. If you've been in the field for a few years, you have read a lot, you know that the person speaking today is a very very experienced expert in qualitative research, especially the first time I came across his book. I think it was, I would say 2006, Dr. Morgan. I was working my dissertation, and it was a focus group. It was a blue book. It was a blue book. I remember that. I still have that, actually. I still have that original blue book, small book, but it was very powerful because those were the early days when um, I didn't even know what qualitative research was. So I read that little book. I said, oh, so this is how it works. And so it helped me in my early days of qualitative research. Those who are requesting permission to record, I'm denying that because we are recording and we share this with everyone who registered. So you don't need to request that. And we post that on our website. I'm going to show you where to get that on our website. So you don't need to request that. And please keep yourself muted so that we can have a good webinar. If you have questions, please hold them for now because people are still introducing themselves. But we'll have time for questions somewhere towards the middle of the webinar after Dr. Morgan has presented. So we are going to have a wonderful time today. So let me get started with the introduction of Dr. Morgan. He received his PhD in sociology from the University of Michigan, and he's currently an emeritus professor in the Department of Sociology at Portland State University, that is in Oregon, United States. He is an interdisciplinary research methodologist with interest in both qualitative research and mixed methods research. And I had quite an interesting conversation with him when we were waiting for you guys to come. How he integrated qualitative research, and I think we'll get to hear about that as he shares with us today. In qualitative research, he is widely known for his work on focus groups, including his books, Focus Groups as Qualitative Research, the Focus Group Kit, um, Basic and Advanced Focus Groups for SAGE, and A New Era in Focus Group Research, co-edited with um, Rosalind Barber. In a related area, he has published Essentials of Dyadic Interviewing for Routledge. In addition, he has written several articles on qualitative data analysis, including his current interest in using artificial intelligence and to analyze qualitative data. And in mixed methods research, he is best known for his work on issues related to paradigms, and more specifically on pragmatism as a paradigm for mixed methods research. His research work in this area emphasizes issues related to the integration of quality research and quantitative research and the role of qualitatively oriented mixed methods research. He also has written a book for SAGE entitled Integrating Qualitative and Quantitative Methods, a Pragmatic Approach. He has served on the editorial boards of 7 journals and has written peer reviews for more than 50 journals. He is currently the series editor for Qualitative Research Methods series from SAGE, and I think many of us have already used that specific journal to download articles. Personally, I have used a lot of articles from that journal, and so we are in for a special treat from Dr. David L. Morgan. It is your time to share with us what you have prepared. Thank you.
Well, okay, thank you for that introduction. I should say that the Qualitative Research Method series from SAGE is the Little Blue Books. So I progressed from having written the Little Blue Book to now editing that series. So if people are interested in qualitative research methods and you have a topic you'd like to write on, we're definitely always recruiting more Little Blue Books. They're now a little larger, they're not so little, and they're more colorful. So we've made some progress that way. Now, as far as the artificial intelligence, I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint and I'll refer particularly to a paper I've written. And once I get done with the presentation, I'll post the reference to that in the chat. Okay, let's see about this. All right. Looking good.
Yeah, we can see it.
How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. So the title is Artificial Intelligence as Meaning Making, Keeping the Human in the Loop. And let me talk about that a little bit, the title and what those components add up to. So for artificial intelligence, if you know anything about the different programs, etc., I'm going to be primarily talking about what's called, well, I'll talk primarily about ChatGPT. And there are other programs like that that are out there. Claude is one, and now there's a new one called DeepSeek. But they're all from the last 2 years. There's really been an amazing breakthrough in artificial intelligence started by ChatGPT. And I'll refer to it mostly because that's the one I'm most familiar with. But what do we think of these programs as? I say as a tool. So we're qualitative researchers. We want to do data analysis. These are tools for data analysis. They're new tools that really require a lot of thinking. And that's primarily what I'm going to talk about today. But what kind of tools are they? They're tools for meaning making. That's what we do in qualitative data analysis and research. We're making meaning, and that's what we use tools traditionally, the older qualitative data analysis tools. And I'll be talking a little bit about things like Max QDA and Vivo, Atlas TI. Those are, kind of they're all interested in artificial intelligence, but right now there are standard tools for qualitative data analysis. Well, once we shift gears and start getting into artificial intelligence, it's going to be very different what we as researchers do as part of the process. So I'm going to emphasize throughout the talk this idea of keeping the human in the loop. So there's going to work back and forth between the machine and the person, between the AI and the researcher. So we're going to have a loop there back and forth. And it's really important to keep ourselves as self-aware, reflexive, qualitative researchers in that loop. Okay, well, let's take a look at qualitative data analysis here. All right. So I've represented that here as a large pile of text. Of course, mostly today we have large computer files, but if we were to print them all out, if you've done a series of focus groups or a number of individual interviews, you really would be swamped by the text as a pile of text. Okay, so what we need to do is take all of that information that we've received from our participants, and we need to make meaning out of that. So this process of interpreting the data, meaning making, is really, to my mind, at the core of qualitative research. Uh, Now, what about AI? Well, we're going to see a lot of robots here in my presentation today because that's how I represent the AI. Well, it does two things, I would say. It produces powerful data summaries. So you can put all that pile of text into ChatGPT, ask it to summarize it, and it will do that literally in seconds. All right. So it is an astounding process the first time you try it. But you want to go beyond that, and the programs also allow researchers to engage in extended conversations with the ongoing analysis process. So I dialogue with the program. They give me a set of suggested themes, let's say. That's how I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But then I say, well, what about this theme? What about that theme? What's most important to the participants? How would you compare this and that? And one of the things you'll find as you use AIs, if you have experience with them, is the more you converse with them and the more you tell them about what interests you and the more you ask deeper questions, the better the answers get. These programs are strange that way, that they really seem to understand and interpret you better the more you exchange information with them. So I think it's very important to see this again, a kind of a loop here where you ask it to tell you what's in the data, and then you ask more questions about that. And as you get better and better answers, you get more and more interesting questions that occur to you. And so there's this progression of the analysis. So it goes much beyond just producing these initial summaries. All right. Well, artificial intelligence is a tool, and it's both a new tool and a unique tool. And you can use it for tasks that go well beyond traditional software. The programs I mentioned they're working very hard actually to integrate AI into their software programs. But I would say that it really is so different that it's questionable whether or not you really want to try to integrate it into the traditional software or to do as I'm going to do today, treat it as something new and unique. Well, here's what we do in traditional software, traditional qualitative analysis. I'll review that a little. We've got most of you, I think, are experienced enough that I won't have to go into much detail here. But we'll have some slides on this for people who are a little more at the beginning stage of qualitative analysis. So what we do traditionally is we attach codes to data segments. We divide the data into smaller segments and give each one a code label. And then we combine those initial codes into bigger categories. And then we might have 10, 20 categories, and we reduce those into a final set of themes. So that's how I think of most qualitative research. Certainly, there are different ways of doing it. For instance, if you are a phenomenologist, you might be not producing themes, but really, there are, I would say the bulk of qualitative research, when you write it up, your results section, you say there were 3 or 4 or 5 major themes, and then you describe those themes and give quotations associated with them. And doing that with these traditional programs, I'm saying that's what we've been doing at least since the 1980s. So we've got a well-established way of doing it now. First doing the coding, then categorizing, then coming up with themes. Well, here's a look at how that happens. So here's some software. This happens to be Max QDA, but we can see that we're taking the code, we're taking the raw material, the textual data over on the right-hand side, and we're matching it with our codes on the left side. So our participant is talking about better use of free time, and we're attaching a code to that segment of the data. And then as you create new codes, you read more in the transcript, then you create new codes out of the new material. So you keep building more and more codes. And here we've got a category called wishes for the future, and then a number of codes about free time, scheduling, flexibility. Those are all codes that fall into the category wishes for the future. And let's take a look at the sort of next step. This is, kind of the beginning. You've got one little piece of text and you've labeled it with one code. Well, after a while, it starts to look more like this. And this is Max again. But now we've got the codes over here. The text is on the right. This is from a little different study, I think. But at any rate, you can see the code strip in the middle. And some of these segments of codes have got six codes attached to them. And right now they're coding over on the left, they're coding getting caught up. Uh, but that's a major theme, and they have several major themes: investment, caught up, variations, etc. And as you go on, you're beginning to aggregate these codes into categories. So under investment, there we can see there are about six codes, etc. In the total data set, there are over 2,000 codes, 2,363, it says at the top on the left there. So this is a couple of dozen interviews, but they're applying, 100 or more codes to each interview. Most of these codes, then, if you look below that, caught up, the one we're working with now, it's been used 113 times. So the data gets very complex as we label it, mark it, code it, categorize it. And we sometimes talk about coding as fracturing the data. Instead of looking at the whole continuous text, now we've got all of these hundreds of codes that we've got to somehow put together, and they call that a process of data reduction. Whoop, jumped out there, I'm sorry. Well, here's a cartoon about that. All right, so you look on the left, and our two guys are talking, and the number one, the guy on the left has all these codes, 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 and then a miracle occurs, and the guy on the right says, I think you should be more explicit in step two here that produces theme, 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 theme. Okay, how do we get from codes and categories and into themes? Well, that's really highly subjective. And I build up on what he said, a miracle occurs. Going from codes to themes is kind of a miraculous transformation. And I think, if you've worked with coding data and you've done qualitative analysis, it really is quite a difficult task to work from all the coding to get into four themes. You might have dozens of codes, 20 categories. How do you get that down into four clear, interpretive, meaning-making themes? Well, I would say the current software doesn't help you that much with that, but AI is going to address it. Okay, so interacting with an AI about data is radically different. To me, it poses the question, why rely on coding? You know, we've been doing it for 40 or 50 years, but where did coding come from? And why are we so, I'll say, in love with coding, enamored of coding? Well, that's one question we can ask, and I'm definitely going to continue asking it throughout this presentation. But we also have to ask, if we're really going to take AI seriously, what's the cost of shifting from coding to AI-based analysis? Isn't AI just a black box? We don't know what's going on inside that box. And to be fair, I would say that's true. We really, within programs like ChatGPT, even the people who created it don't know the precise way that it works in terms of interpreting our questions and giving us clear answers to those questions. That's what it's designed to do, but the way it accomplishes it is somewhat mysterious. Whoop. So how do we interact with an AI to produce the desired results? Well, the key concept here is prompts. And here's a prompt for you. Create a picture of a robot talking to a man where the man has a speech bubble that contains the text, create a picture of a robot. Oh, where did all these robots come from? Well, I created them with an artificial intelligence program called DALL-E, which is also part of ChatGPT. So literally, I told the program, create a picture of a robot talking with a man, etc., and it popped up this picture. So we use a very conversational approach in this AI analysis, and the stuff in bold there in a different font is going to be what we say to the program, and then that's the prompt, and it will give us the kind of responses that do our analysis for us. Okay, so I begin the kind of prompting that I do with broad, unstructured queries about the data. So here's some examples. What were the key topics in this document? What were the main themes with regard to, and then I'll supply my research question. Give me a list of what mattered most to these participants. Tell me about the participants' response to, and then I'll give interview question one, and then I'll do it again with interview question two. But these are exactly the kinds of things that I talked about earlier that AI has real power in summarizing qualitative data. Okay, well, then continue the conversation and ask it more about what it's given you, those proposed themes, and that will really, I say, thicken your analysis. Tell me more about how the theme of, and I'll give it one of its proposed themes, how did that matter to the participants? How is theme one related to theme two? Out of the list of themes, which ones mattered the most to the participants and why was that? Okay. And the third thing you really need to do after you've got all that feedback from the AI, that might be a process of, say 2 or 3 sessions that each last an hour, 2 or 3 hours. Wow, think about that compared to how long you spend in coding. Oh my God. Okay. But one of the things I suggest that you really want to do afterwards is to review the actual text and ensure that the themes you've selected are a good fit to the data. Now, if you've heard much about AI, you may have heard that it can hallucinate. That's the phrase we use, and it can find things that are really not there. Um, well, I've never had that happen to me in analyzing any of the 3 detailed data sets that I've done, but I think it's very important that you check and make sure that the messages you've gotten, the interpretations you've developed, the themes that you've really got now fairly well down, well, how do they work in the data? So I go back through the raw data, the transcripts. For each theme I've got, I say, is there really enough data to support this theme? Okay. Is it a hallucination or is it really something that's there in the data? Well, believe me, if you collected your data, if you've read through it several times, you'll know if those themes are there. That's called familiarizing yourself with the data. You can't just dump any data you want to into AI and expect to believe and rely on the results. You really have to know your data so that you can ask intelligent questions about it. But once you've got some analysis done, then go back through the data and see if each theme is well supported. And then secondly, see if there's anything important that you've missed in the data. Okay. Were there some themes that somehow just didn't come out? Well, the other thing you're doing at this stage, and I think if you've done some qualitative analysis, you'll be familiar with the idea, selecting quotes that illustrate each theme. So I'm going back through the data, looking for quotes that I can really use with the themes, checking how good the themes are. That's sort of the final stage of the analysis. And nowadays, the AI is getting better at even suggesting quotes that you might look at. Uh, I again still think you should go back through the data and not just say, oh, okay, it gave me this quote, it gave me that quote. I like number two, I'll use that. Well, that would speed up the process too, but I think it might give you some cost in terms of the quality of your analysis. Okay, now here we are with back keeping the human in the loop, and that's what we were doing in that third stage. And keep going back and looking at the data and working with the raw data to make sure it matches up with what we've gotten from our analysis with the AI. Using AI as a tool, it's our responsibility. Okay, so we have to do that well. Well, another issue you may have heard about with AI is bias. Can we trust the analyses that we get from AI? Well, we do need to be very careful in this regard. All AI like ChatGPT has been trained on available data. Okay, so literally they've taken, I think they usually start with Wikipedia and then produce something like 1 million times Wikipedia by finding all of the text they can get on the internet and using that as the underlying basis for the, if you will, knowledge that the computer can produce and the answers that can give you. Well, if that initial data is biased, then the AI's analyses are going to be biased. So that's a core question that you have to think about in terms of being really reflective about your analysis, about the responses that you're getting from the AI, about the conversations that you're having. Okay. Well, we have this problem all the time in regular qualitative analysis. Okay. It isn't just the robot who might have some bias here. Okay. How do we deal with human bias in qualitative data analysis? Well, I mentioned the word being reflective, and the idea here is the reflexivity about our goals and our understandings and the places we come from. What do we deal with? Well, we think about, ourselves and our stances as having come from being influenced by race, gender, sexuality, nationality, age, and more, cultural context, historical context, and more. Okay. So hopefully, if you're well trained in qualitative analysis, you've thought about this whole process of being reflective and reflexivity, and you really have examined yourself. Sometimes we say in qualitative research that the researcher is the instrument. You are the instrument that analyzes the data. Well, as an instrument, you've got a lot of background and a lot of things that have influenced your thought process. You really need to be reflexive about that. AI, on the other hand, has no reflexivity. So again, it's essential to keep the human in the loop because we need to supply the reflexivity that guides our data analysis. Nothing can replace familiarity with the data, however. I've already mentioned this, but there's a familiarity with yourself, but you have to think about yourself and how that relates to your analysis process. So AI is going to give you these what I call candidate themes, possible themes, suggested themes, and you have to ask, do those make sense to you? Do they indicate any bias to you? You have to be the one who judges the quality of the material that the AI is giving you. Okay, well, let's look at the future here. We've got several different kinds of robots there. How will AI like ChatGPT change the work we do as qualitative researchers? Well, one of the things you can do is to brainstorm new topics. So before you even get involved in analysis, you can, have long conversations with the computer about the topic that you're interested in, about your perspective, and about things that the computer suggests to you. Then we can get into the idea that we produced all of that text and we can assimilate large volumes of data. Finally, we can get to the idea of providing new analytic insights. So those are all things that we can do by using AI. And then how do we envision our relationship with AI? Well, I've highlighted the word assistant because that's what I see people saying most often these days. And I've taken that word and I put it in Microsoft Word, you can generate synonyms. So I got lots of synonyms for the word assistant. And then I got synonyms for them. And I compiled this list of 20 or so things we could describe AI and our relationship. Well, I think that the relationship with AI goes well beyond being an assistant. So I picked three other words. I think I like collaborator best, co-creator, partner. We have to watch getting a little too, there's a word, anthropomorphic, means we treat the machine as a person. Okay, so is it really our up there advisor, ally, aide, co-creator? It's that sounds a little bit like we're treating it as a person. Collaborator, maybe not so much. That's why I like that word. But you really do work together with the software to produce your results. Okay, let's look again at the big picture, getting to towards the end of the presentation here. Is AI a new paradigm for qualitative research? Well, that word paradigm gets used a lot and it doesn't necessarily always have a clear meaning. So I like to say that a field has a paradigm when there's consensus about two things: the kinds of goals that the field should be pursuing, the kind of methods the field should be using to reach those goals. So when we have consensus in those areas, there's a paradigm. And traditionally, if we wanted to ask about qualitative analysis and say, is there a paradigm there? Well, the goal is meaning making, and the methods we've been using are all of those existing software programs. Well, is that really a paradigm? Is AI really a new paradigm? What I personally say is not quite for whether AI is a new paradigm because it doesn't change our basic goal. We need to interpret our data in meaningful ways, so I tend to look on AI as a new invention. It makes it easier to meet that core goal. And as a new invention, it's very disruptive compared to the traditional process of coding and using programs that are designed to help you do coding. Okay, where are we now? Well, I would summarize the state of the literature as trying to find a way to do coding using AI. Now, coding to me is an older, well-established tool. AI is a new and very different tool. So if you look there, I think of the AI as the robot, and I think of coding as the wrench. Why, British would say spanner, I guess, but why in the world are we using high technology to do something that comes from the 1980s? So this is where I get the idea of a disruptive technology that we're really going to be doing things very differently. And I'm going to make a bold prediction here. And here's our robot with a very different tool. AI is such a disruptive invention that it will replace coding as the main method for analyzing qualitative data. Now, is that really going to happen? I can't swear to that. Uh, but ultimately, one of the things we'll need to do as humans using AI as a tool, back to taking a self-reflexive stance to explore AI as a powerful tool while we keep the human in the loop. So that's what I'm advocating, but that question of whether or not we're really going to totally disrupt existing qualitative analysis tools, is AI going to be a bright and shining future? Well, I told the program, show me a picture of a robot on a yellow brick road. And this is what it produced, and it added a rainbow and a happy vision of the future. But if that's going to happen, if AI is really going to become a dominant technology for qualitative data analysis, that's not going to happen on its own. It isn't going to be just gradual social change or passive diffusion of innovation. Instead, people like me, motivated researchers, are going to be convincing their colleagues to do things differently. In particular, we're going to be publishing articles and books, giving talks, going to conferences, creating new software, doing webinars, making YouTube videos. It's really going to be it's the first time I've thought about this, but a little different way of talking about the human in the loop. Okay. So if this technology is going to really take hold, it's going to be because people have really worked hard to make that happen, which is what I'm doing today. And I hope I'm interesting you and maybe following along on this walk down what may be a yellow brick road. Okay, so that's what we've got for today. And let me switch out of the sharing mode. Okay, back to, I may need some help with this, Safari. What am I looking for? Video?
Um, you
Nope.
should be able to go up and click and share screen.
Yeah, stop sharing. Okay, how about that? Oh, there we are, all of us. Okay. So, and I said I would post something in the chat. Let's see where that is. And this is the first paper that I've written on using ChatGPT. It's in the International Journal of Qualitative Methods. I've got a second paper that's forthcoming. It's going to be in a special issue of the journal Qualitative Health Research. Most of my topics over the years have been on qualitative health. So that's why I'm publishing that one. They're going to have a special issue on AI and qualitative research, and there'll be a follow-up paper to this one. But that's out there now. So we've got some questions coming up.
All
Shall
right.
I go ahead and
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
very much, Dr. Morgan. Let's give him a round of applause. I know the digital applause are there. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This was an amazing, amazing presentation. You have opened our eyes, our ears, our hearts to the new possibilities of AI in qualitative data analysis. This is, I mean, it is leaving me with so many questions. And I'm sure we have questions coming in, but thank you so much for sharing this with us. Before we entertain questions, I want to make the announcement as I mentioned to you. After this, now you can post your questions there. I know some of you want to have a certificate. So if you want to have your certificate, you need to send us your membership ID number. I know many of you are not members yet. If you want to become a member, you can go to our website there, qlrconnect.com, and then there will be a section for membership on the right side. You take a screenshot while we are still here that shows your name, because you will need that. So you send both of them, your membership ID and your screenshot. If you're not a member, you can become a member anytime this month, and the claim will be valid until the end of February. So don't worry if you're not yet a member. You can always process that by emailing us or filling up the form there on the website. Let's get started with the questions. If you have other questions pertaining to the membership, just write to info at qlrconnect.com. That's the same email that we use for all inquiries. Let's get started with the questions. Dr.
Uh,
Morgan, thank you
I
for
see one person has asked for the link to the
the
citation,
article.
and that's in the chat. So you need to go to the bottom of the screen, open up chat, and you'll see the reference is one of the elements in the chat. Along with the first question that I get a lot about ethical implications for Gen AI tools. That stands for generative AI. That's the kind of artificial intelligence that ChatGPT and all those other programs are generative AI or Gen AI. And okay, so one of the first things to say is that if you use ChatGPT, will it take your data and essentially absorb that into its reference base? Will it put it out on the internet? Well, if you tell it no, it won't. Okay, so there is a place in the parameters for ChatGPT where you tell it, do not use my session as part of your reference data. So then the data becomes privately held, just like it would be, say, if you were working with a transcriber, it's between you and them and no one else. The other thing I'd heavily emphasize for any kind of qualitative data analysis for someone other than just you is involved is to anonymize your data. Take out all of the names, places, and everything else. And that's a good thing to do while you're familiarizing yourself with the data. Or to be honest, I use another AI program called Otter AI to transcribe my data. And then I read through the transcripts I get back, and often there are small changes and improvements that need to be made. And then that's a good time to anonymize the data and take out anything that might help someone identify a participant. So anonymize the data and then learn how to turn off ChatGPT's function so that it won't, one word would be scrape your data.
Okay,
Okay.
let's go to other questions. Before that, I think you should resend that link, Dr. Morgan, because I don't see it on this side, and a few other people are saying that. So just repost it in the chat.
Oh, I probably, how about that?
Oh,
I put it in there
ah,
and then forgot
that's
to post it.
that's
So
good.
whoever said they didn't see it, they were right.
Yeah, it's here now. Thank you so much. The complete references there. Okay, here is another question that just came up. A few others are coming up. AI can analyze statistics, but not emotions. Is this correct? Or if it can, how reliable can we trust that the analysis are?
Uh, that's a good question. I've never asked it to do that myself. Uh, I would say it's not statistics, it's the content of your data. So the same way that you're always going to be analyzing transcripts and asking what's in this transcript and what did it mean, that's what AI is going to get at. So I don't see using it to count things in a statistical way. Uh, but if you want to ask, was this participant particularly upset during this interview? I'm not sure what AI would look for in there. So, and if you just had a transcript, those are usually pretty weak on emotions to begin with. You can certainly hear them if you listen to the transcript. I haven't used AI with audio files. I don't know what the story is there. You can certainly use it with PDFs and illustrations, but those are text and pictures are the main things that I've seen that the AI has been used for. Uh, but uh, I will say, as it's kind of a joke, but AI is very bad at arithmetic. So if you ask it, gave it two big numbers and asked it to add it together, I think they've improved it lately. It probably can't do it because it's all it does is things that it's learned from the internet that it's seen out there. And so it's never seen those two numbers added together, so it doesn't know anything about that. So you really have to think about the database that you're working with and what can it do. How can so if it's read millions of papers and books and sources. Yeah, it knows a lot about, say, I've been working with Alzheimer's caregivers and the stresses that they experience. And so somebody who's taking care of a family member who has dementia, uh, that's what I ask AI to summarize, and it does a brilliant job of it. Okay. I ask it to multiply two big numbers. That's kind of beyond its capacity. It doesn't have a calculator built into it. It has all of whatever it's scraped up from the internet built into it. How well it can recognize emotions, I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. Another question. This is a quick question. My question is, in reporting data analysis, should I mention in my text that I use AI in data analysis for keeping my reflexivity role?
Well, I think there's a growing literature in this. The second paper that I have coming out talks about the kind of methods that I described here in a more concrete way. In particular, I call it query-based analysis, QUERY, QBA. So when that paper comes out, then you'll be able to say, I followed Morgan's QBA processes, the three steps that he recommended, which would be first searching for general themes, then pursuing deeper conversations to thicken and elaborate those themes, and then third, going back through the data to ensure that your themes are accurate and to select useful quotations to match them. So the more the literature evolves, the classic thing you'll have is people you can cite. And there's at least one book coming out this year, and I've contracted with Sage for another book to put out next year. And the main thing I would suggest is going out and starting looking for that. You could go into, you could take the paper I've got, and it's got like 150 citations in Google Scholar. That's just in about a year, and you could put qualitative artificial intelligence, qualitative chat GPT, put search terms like that into Google Scholar, and you'll start finding some of the basic articles that have been written. There are two or three even earlier ones that are cited in my article, but there wasn't much when I wrote it in early 2024, but it's a rapidly growing literature. And so what I would suggest is that you think about what do I want to say? Uh, Using the literature as a way to describe how you did your analysis. So definitely say that you used AI, describe how you used AI. I think really good practice is, you'll see in my paper, to put in the prompts that you use, the queries that you actually supplied to the AI, so that the reader can understand how it is that you got data from the program.
Thank you so much. We have another question, and the question is about publications. Do high impact journals accept manuscripts that used artificial intelligence, especially when they
Well,
did
it's
them?
really very early to answer that. The journal I published in the International Journal of Qualitative Methods is a high impact journal, but it's primarily a methodological journal.
Mhm.
Okay. Qualitative Health Research is a high impact journal, and they're definitely have published articles using AI, or they've got this whole special issue coming out. So I think it's an issue. It's something that the question of who are you going to get as reviewers, and how are your reviewers going to react, and that's going to be a rapidly evolving process. Some journals are not going to like it, and they'll assign it to hostile reviewers, and there's nothing you can do about that. Other journals are going to be very open-minded and look at your citations and assign people who have actually used qualitative analysis with AI to be your reviewers. I'm getting quite a number of articles to review. Most of them are methodological, but I think we're going to, come out as usual and say, well, we need a methods reviewer. Who's it going to be? Oh, well, Morgan's published on this topic. Let's send it to him. And so we'll just have to see how that evolves, but it's a question we can't answer yet.
Thank you. I'm going to some of my questions here while I wait for other questions. We still have 12 minutes, so this is good. Um, I want to take you back, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and this is for the sake of those who are still new to qualitative research who may be here or watching this recording. What attracted you to qualitative research?
So say that again. What
What
has
attracted you to qualitative research?
affects the use of it?
What attracted you to
Oh,
qualitative?
attracted me. You're asking me about my background. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
well, that's goes back a long ways. When I was in graduate school, I actually, back in the 1970s, took a course on qualitative research, and I was curious about it. I told you earlier that with my mixed methods background, I've actually taught graduate research courses on regression analysis, and most recently, almost all qualitative things, but I have quite a strong background in statistical analysis. That's what was emphasized in my graduate program, but they had the one course on qualitative research. So I took that, and in essence, was trained in both types of methods even that long ago. And I did a largely qualitative dissertation, a community study in an old age home. And so I've been doing qualitative data pretty much my whole career.
Okay, okay. It's one thing I've discovered in many of us who are into qualitative research. We really came from quantitative research, and eventually, we integrated our life into qualitative research. Another question. One of the things that I've discovered in many places where I give trainings on qualitative research, webinars and things, the question is always on how do I do my data analysis in a practical way? It's like now people have learned how to collect data and it's okay, it's all well and good, most of the times. But when they get to data analysis, and here I'm not talking about the technology, just the mindset. What are some of the practical lessons, strategies that you can tell people what to watch for when they are analyzing data and if they're still new?
Mhm. Well, I usually emphasize starting at the very beginning with the process of reflexivity, and I have some practical suggestions for that. Um, the classic one you get is to keep a journal while you collect your qualitative data, but that doesn't really take you very far. And so I suggest starting down and doing the memoing process before you begin collecting the data and ask, like you just said for qualitative methods, let's say for this topic, why am I interested in this topic? And literally ask yourself that question. Do self-interviews and write memos. Okay. Have another person interview you. If you have a qualitative research partner, have them interview you about your thoughts, feelings, experiences with your research topic. But try to get as self-aware as possible about where you're starting from. And then that's, I think, a really useful way to accomplish reflexivity. It can sound very vague until you put it into some concrete tasks that you need to pursue.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Oh,
so let's see if I can catch up with some of the questions I'm seeing in the chat. And it says you have to train AI about what you want to do with qualitative data. Well, good procedure there is at least you begin saying, imagine, not just saying imagine, you literally tell the AI, you are an expert in qualitative data analysis. In particular, you have been trained with X method. Now we're just getting into an exchange with a well-known content analyzer from Germany, Philip Mayring. He just put an article in the journal FQS, which Forum for Qualitative Studies. It has both English and German, and I don't know any German. In German, it's Forschung Qualitaten something, But at any rate, he didn't like his experiences trying to do his style of qualitative content analysis. And other qualitative researchers have reacted and said, well, you didn't do a very good job of using the AI. So what I did, he had an excerpt in his that he actually analyzed and they reprinted in his article. So before I told ChatGPT to analyze that excerpt segment of data, about a page and a half of transcript, I said, tell me about Philip Mayring's qualitative data approach to qualitative data analysis. And so we began to brainstorm and it produced quite a nice summary of his approach to qualitative content analysis. And then I said, well, tell me more about this, that, and the other. And so literally I primed the pump to get AI ready to do the analysis. And then I fed it the portion of a transcript and said, use Mayring's qualitative content analysis to analyze this section of a transcript. And it did a much better job than what he showed in his article. Okay, so it can really, if you just ask it for themes, which I said, say, you are a qualitative data analyst, and I would like to know the key themes that are in these transcripts. You don't need to do more than that. But if you want to examine a specific type of analysis, like Mayring wanted to, then I'd suggest conversing with the AI a little bit before that to get it literally to put all that in its memory so that it'll be using that as a stored perspective. One of the things you have to understand about AI, it's a little bit complicated, is that everything you ask it and every answer it gives you, it stores that and uses it to further specify what it says with the additional conversation. So when I say it, in essence, you have a more and more interesting conversation, the more you continue it, that's because it knows what it said to you and it knows how you reacted to it. In this case, it knows what Mayring's style of analysis is. If you tell it to talk about that and get that into the machinery, then it'll do a better job with it. Most times you can just ask for themes and pursue themes and work with what's in your data.
Thank you very much. We have another question here. Is AI helpful and reliable in analyzing quantitative analysis like qualitative analysis? Well, yeah, I think you're the right person to answer that. Is it as good in analyzing quantitative data as it is good analyzing qualitative data?
Well, I haven't ever used quantitative data, and I've seen just one article on it that was very impressed. Again, Uh, I mean, what got me so involved with this topic is that I put my first qualitative data in and asked it to summarize it, and it was like what we call head slap experience. It was so good. I mean, I was very familiar with that data, and these people who wrote this quantitative article said the same thing. I mean, they literally, compared it to SPSS in terms of its ability to analyze the data. And so it gave it, let's say, a spreadsheet of, we've got all the classic things where the columns are the variables and the rows are the respondents. And then it said, describe, this, that, and the other, and it did it. And then it said, show me correlations and regressions, and it did that. And, for those of you who are familiar with it, I don't know whether it does a stepwise regression or what in there, but these people were quite convinced by the way they fed it literally raw data, and it produced quantitative analyses. By the way, we've seen in the chat that several people say that it can be used for emotions and sentiments, and someone even suggested, let's see, a Plutchik wheel of emotions or Vader. So I think that would be in the same sort of illustration what I was just giving. And, I would say, tell me about Plutchik's wheel of emotions and how it could be applied to qualitative data analysis. That would be my prompt. And then it would give me that and show me what that was, and then give me thoughts about how it could be applied to qualitative data analysis. And I would say, look at the qualitative data analysis part, tell me more about, and I'd say, I'd give you a transcript. Show me places in the transcript where the wheel of emotions is relevant, or where various emotions shown on Plutarch's wheel fit in. So prime it again by talking about the kind of system you're using to understand emotions, and then go in deeper from there. I mean, I think if you just said, tell me about the emotions in this transcript, I'd be surprised if it did very well, but then maybe I would be surprised. I don't know. Uh, but someone also said using it for their autoethnography, which first time I've heard of that, which I think would be very interesting. So you would have this kind of, again, what I call brainstorming conversation, but you could certainly talk to it quite a bit about your own experiences, your feelings, your emotions with regard to something, and get its reactions based on, again, this huge knowledge base that it has. But, that would be a very interesting process. I'd even recommend a journal for it is the Qualitative Report. If you don't know that journal, they publish a lot of work from beginning researchers. So people who are having their first experience with publishing qualitative research, TQR, the Qualitative Report, is a good place to do that. They also like autoethnography, and they also like AI. So if you're a beginning researcher doing your first publication that involves AI in autoethnography, try out the Qualitative Report as a possible place to publish that.
Thank you very much. for entertaining all these questions. And again, we want to thank you, Dr. Morgan, for sharing this. It's like 1 hour just just flew by so fast. Hopefully, we'll get another opportunity to have more conversation with you in the future. And please search his name. He has so many publications, a lot of good stuff that he has published. Some of the books, you can go on Amazon and purchase those. And my favorite is always, of course, the focus group discussion, the different types that you have. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and especially those who are in the eastern side of the world, Philippines, India, Nepal. I know it's extremely late right now. We really thank you for coming. We look forward to having you next month. In a month, we will have another one, and we will be communicating with you. The recording will be sent to you within the next few days. And again, if you need the certificate, just send your membership ID. And if you don't have one, go to the website. You will be able to become a member, and we'll issue that anytime this month. But learning is free here on Qualitative Research Connect. Good night, everyone who was in the East. Good day for those who are in Europe and America and the Americas, Canada, South America, Haiti, and all those places. It's nice to see you again. See you next month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.